Typically, wild animals steer clear of humans due to fear. Therefore, when a tigress approached a lone man, he was taken aback by the extraordinary request she made. The wilderness held a mystical allure for Jensen, a place he cherished exploring since childhood. Nestled in a quaint rural village in Russia, he grew up alongside the sprawling forest that enveloped his home. Guided by his father, Jensen learned the art of hunting, tracking, and embracing nature's beauty. With time, he became a skilled hunter, intimately familiar with the forest terrain and its inhabitants. One ordinary morning, as the sun cast a surreal glow over the forest, Jensen set out on a routine hunt. His goal was to procure meat for both his dwindling supply and his customers' needs. However, this day would prove to be anything but ordinary. Unbeknownst to Jensen, his love for the wild would soon thrust him into a life-altering situation, setting off a chain of events that would forever change his destiny. Once it had reached midday, Jensen decided to take a break for some lunch. He had already managed to hunt a few birds, and he decided to cook one for his lunch. He was in an unfamiliar area of the forest, but Jensen wasn't scared as he could always follow his tracks back to the village. Ahead of him, the hunter could see a lot of light, which meant that there was a clearing which would be perfect to rest in. But as Jensen entered the small clearing, he never would have expected to find what he did. Standing in the middle of the clearing was a tiger. Jensen froze in fear. The animal had clearly heard the hunter coming, as it was staring directly at him when Jensen emerged from the trees. But despite catching the man off guard, the tiger didn't seem to want to hurt him. In fact, the feline was acting very calmly. Taking the animal's behavior as an opportunity, Jensen quickly raised his gun and leveled it at the beast. Still, the big cat didn't move and simply stared at the hunter. Confused by the tiger's behavior and not wanting to shoot the beautiful creature if it posed no actual threat to him, Jensen slowly lowered his gun and began to creep towards the animal. Seeing the man move towards it, the tiger began to take a few steps back, growling softly in warning. As the animal moved, Jensen noticed that it was clearly female as her teats were full of milk. This meant that she had some cubs nearby. Another thing that Jensen noticed about the animal was that she was clearly limping. Worried about the tigress's health, the hunter softly called out to her as he got closer. This seemed to calm the animal as she stopped growling and allowed the man to get within a few feet of her. Once Jensen was closer to the big cat, he realized that the tigress's wound was much worse than he thought. It looked as if someone had tried to shoot the poor feline, and it had caught her in the back of her leg. However, it wasn't a clean shot, and it had clearly gotten infected to the point that the animal's health was compromised. Upon seeing the horrid state of the wound, Jensen instantly tried to help, but the big cat kept him away with her growls. The animal then did something truly extraordinary. She turned and started to walk away towards the edge of the clearing, but stopped just as she reached the trees. It was at this point that Jensen began to hear tiny little mews and growls. It was the tigress's cubs. The adult big cat gently picked one of her babies up from the ground and limped her way back towards Jensen. Once she had reached him, the feline gently set the cub down at the hunter's feet. She then went back to retrieve a second cub and left it right next to the first one. Jensen was incredibly confused and astonished by what was happening. He didn't know what the tigress wanted him to do with her cubs, and he was too afraid of what she might do if he tried to touch them. It was at that moment that the tigress began to walk away from the hunter and her babies. Jensen was shocked and tried to tell the animal to wait. However, the feline merely looked up at Jensen one last time before disappearing into the woods. The hunter was stunned at what had happened. However, he knew that the mama tiger wouldn't leave her babies if she didn't need to, and he feared that the adult feline knew that she didn't have much time left and wanted to make sure that her cubs would survive. Not wanting to leave the two young tigers alone to fend for themselves, Jensen scooped the animals up in his arms and made his way back out of the forest and back to his home. Once safely back in the village, Jensen decided to take the two tiger cubs to the local vet. He wanted to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the babies so that he would be able to raise them as best he could. The vet gave the two young felines a clean bill of health and told Jensen how to look after them, including what to feed them and how often as they grew older. The hunter thanked the vet and took the tigers home, where he followed the vet's advice to the letter. As time went by, the two young cubs, whom Jensen named Sasha and Alexei, began to grow larger and stronger. At one point, officials from the nearby city zoo became aware of the two young tigers. They approached Jensen and offered to buy the two cubs from him so that they could become part of the zoo's attractions. However, despite the large amount of money that they were willing to give him, the hunter refused to part with the animals. He believed that he would be betraying the mama tigress who had entrusted her babies to Jensen for safekeeping. Eventually, the time came for the two tigers to be returned to the wild. They had grown into beautiful young adults and knew all of the skills that they would need to survive in the wild by themselves. Jensen was sad to see the animals go, but knew that it was for the best as the forest was where they belonged. A couple of years later, Jensen was walking through the forest looking for any good game to hunt when he suddenly had the idea to go back to the clearing where he had first found the tigress and her cubs. He hoped that maybe, despite the odds, the two animals that he'd raised would somehow be in the area. Upon getting to the clearing, Jensen noticed that it hadn't changed much, although there seemed to be quite a few odd holes dug in the ground. Thinking nothing of it, the hunter decided to set up his tent and camp in the clearing for the night before heading back to his home the next day. Looking up from his campfire, he saw a huge grizzly bear coming out of the woods and into the clearing. The bear noticed the hunter straight away and immediately began to charge at him. Realizing he had left his gun behind, Jensen sprinted into the woods, away from the approaching grizzly bear. Despite his efforts, the bear kept pace, closing in on the terrified hunter. Just as Jensen feared for his life, two familiar orange and black figures dashed from the trees, positioning themselves between him and the bear. To his astonishment, they were Sasha and Alexei, the tigers he had raised. With Jensen safely behind them, Sasha and Alexei bravely faced off against the grizzly, eventually driving it away. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Jensen watched as the tigers retreated into the forest, their loyalty and courage leaving a lasting impression. Though Jensen knew he would likely never see them again, he found solace in knowing that Sasha and Alexei were thriving in their natural habitat, a testament to the bond they had shared. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also, press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.